Can the Minister update the Senate on how the highly successful Pacific Labour Scheme and Seasonal Worker Program is helping Australian farmers to harvest their crops, which is protecting jobs and regional communities through the impacts of COVID-19, as well as supporting economies within our region?
Minister for International Development and the Pacific, Senator Seselja.
Well, thank you very much, and I thank Senator McLaughlin for his question. I note his home state of South Australia's wonderful leadership in supporting Pacific labour mobility. Now, firstly, as we all respond to COVID-19 and look at economic recovery, I want to reiterate that there has never been a more important time for Australia to stand shoulder to shoulder with our partners across the Pacific. The Seasonal Worker Program and Pacific Labour Scheme have been instrumental in helping to address critical workforce shortages in rural and regional communities. There are now more than 12,000 Pacific and Timorese workers in Australia, with another 27,000 in the work-ready pool. In fact, Pacific Labour has been the lifeblood for many Australian businesses and ensured fresh fruit and vegetables have reached our supermarkets and our tables. And the Australian government values the contribution that Pacific workers have made to our economy. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought into sharp focus workforce shortages in critical sectors, including agriculture, and highlighted the importance of Pacific labour. Since the restart of COVID-safe recruitment of Pacific workers in September 2020, more than 7,400 Pacific workers have arrived and supported our horticulture and meat processing sectors, and 2,700 further recruitments are currently being planned. More than 5,000 Pacific and Timorese workers stayed in Australia working during COVID. The Australian government is grateful to these thousands of Pacific and Timor-Leste workers for choosing to work in Australia, for helping Australian businesses in our time of need. They're far from home, far from their family and communities, from their one-talks, and I'd acknowledge the sacrifice they are making right now. And that these programs are delivering for Australian farmers, for Australian consumers and for our Pacific family. For our part, the Australian government is committed to the future of Pacific labour mobility and seeing workers and employers benefit from these highly successful programs.
Can the Minister advise the Senate on how the coalition government is improving and streamlining Australia's labour mobility programs to further maximise the benefits of these initiatives for Australian businesses as well as Pacific workers as we recover from the pandemic?
Senator Seselja.
Thank you, and I can. Last week, along with my fellow ministers Littleproud and Payne, we announced a public consultation process to streamline our Pacific labour mobility initiative. Now, our commitment is to ensure that Pacific labour mobility is sustainable and efficient into the future, and to position Pacific labour mobility for significant future growth. Through this redesign, we'll make it even easier to recruit Pacific workers to meet current and future workforce shortages, while also continuing to ensure the integrity of the programs and the welfare of workers. Now, worker welfare is absolutely paramount, and I can't stress this enough. Welfare and program integrity remains at the heart of our enhanced labour programs. But we also know that Pacific labour alone cannot fill the huge seasonal workforce shortages that our farmers and rural industries will experience beyond the pandemic. As we consider how to meet future workforce needs, we will ensure any new arrangements build on and complement the gold standard set by our Pacific labour mobility programs.